You were born on a world of silence. They called you Alara, a name whispered only in thought. Your people evolved beyond the need for sound. They communicated through shimmering waves of pure mind. Their cities were built of crystal and light. Their lives were symphonies of shared consciousness, a perfect, silent harmony. But you were different. Your mind was a quiet room in a bustling hall. You heard their thoughts as faint echoes. Your own thoughts were yours alone, a secret you could not share. This isolation carved a hollow space inside you. You would stand on the high balconies of your home. You would gaze out at the sea of stars. They felt closer than your own kind. The elders regarded you with a gentle pity, a flaw in the grand design. They sent you thoughts of comfort and belonging. Yet their sympathy felt like a wall. It separated you just as much as your silence. You learned to pretend, to smile when the collective mind was joyful, to project calm when their thoughts were serene. You spent your days in the great libraries. You consumed knowledge through touch and light. You learned of star science and ancient histories. You learned of other races who shouted into the void. They used crude vibrations to speak. You found it fascinating and lonely. You longed for a voice. You just never knew what that truly meant. A strange energy began to wake inside you. It started as a warmth in your chest, a low hum that had no sound. It was a feeling you could not project. It was entirely your own. At first, you thought it was an illness, a symptom of your broken connection to your people. But the feeling grew stronger. It seemed to respond to the star-filled sky. When you looked at the distant nebulae, it pulsed. When you traced the paths of lonely comets, it sang. It was a language without words, a melody without notes. The stars themselves seemed to speak to you. They shared a secret your people had long forgotten. You began to seek solitude more than ever. You would sneak away to the silent mountain peaks. There, under a blanket of brilliant suns, you would listen. The energy flowed through you. It was like a current of pure light. It filled the empty spaces inside you. It made you feel less alone. This new power was your secret treasure, a friend in your world of isolation. Yet it was also a source of deep fear. It was a power your people did not understand, a power they had given up long ago. You knew, instinctively, that they would not see it as a gift. They would see it as a threat. The pressure inside you built for weeks. A star-born river seeking an outlet. One night, the twin moons bathed your world in silver. You stood on your balcony, gazing at a familiar constellation. The energy surged. It was too much to hold inside. You had to let it out. You focused on a single point of light, a distant blue giant star. You gathered the feeling in your chest. You shaped it with your will. You pushed it upwards, through your throat. You opened your mouth, a part of you that had never been used. A flicker of light, small and bright, escaped your lips. And with it came a sound. It was not a word. It was a single, pure note, a chime of crystal and fire. The first sound you had ever made, the first sound your world had heard in 10,000 years. It echoed in the silent city, a ripple of impossible noise. The elders felt it, not as a thought, but as a raw shock to their shared mind. It was a feeling of something broken, something new and dangerous. The elders summoned you the next day. Their minds projected a cold and formal dread. As you stood before them, a change occurred. A soft light began to emanate from your right hand. You looked down in surprise. A glowing spiral was etching itself into your palm. It swirled like a miniature galaxy, The mark was warm to the touch. It pulsed with a gentle, inner light. The elders recoiled. Their thoughts were a storm of fear and confusion. This was a physical manifestation of your crime, a brand of the chaotic power you had unleashed. They saw it not as a wonder, but as a curse. You tried to explain. You tried to project the feeling of the stars, the beautiful music they sang to you. But your thoughts were weak. They were drowned out by their powerful chorus of fear. To them, sound was a primitive force, a weapon of less evolved beings. Your voice was a blasphemy against their perfect silence. The mark on your palm grew brighter. It responded to your distress. It felt like a part of you now, a permanent reminder of your difference. You were no longer just Alara, the quiet one. You were Alara, the girl with fire in her hand, the girl who had broken the eternal peace. The judgment of the elders was absolute. Their decision was sent without a single dissenting thought. You were a contagion, a dangerous variable that threatened their stable existence. They could not risk what your power might become. You had to be removed for the good of the whole. They led you to the starport, a place used only for automated cargo ships. There, a small scout vessel waited. Its systems were cold and impersonal. They gave you no supplies for a long journey. They did not expect you to survive. This was not a journey. It was an execution, delivered with silent regret. You did not resist. A strange sense of calm settled over you. They were afraid of you, but you were no longer afraid of being alone. You had the stars as your companions now. The airlock hissed shut, a sound that was alien to you. Through the viewport, you watched your homeworld. It shrank from a planet to a moon, then to a silent star among countless others. You were adrift in the deep void, utterly and finally alone. For weeks, the scout ship drifted on its preset course. The autopilot was taking you far from your home system, out into the unexplored reaches of the arm. The silence of the cockpit was different from the silence of your home. It was an empty silence, devoid of thought, of life, of everything. It was a true and terrifying loneliness. The mark on your palm was your only companion. It would pulse softly in the dark, a tiny star to light your endless night. You learned to live with the hum of the ship's engines, the clicks of the environmental controls. These small sounds were now your whole world. Sometimes you would practice. You would whisper small notes into the empty cockpit. Tiny sparks of light would dance in the air before you. Then, one cycle, everything changed. A loud alarm blared through the ship. The sound was so sudden, so violent, it made you jump. Red lights flashed on the control panel. The ship's simple VI spoke in a flat, monotone voice. Proximity alert. Multiple unknown vessels detected. You looked at the forward screen. Empty space stared back. But the sensor display told a different story. Dozens of contacts were appearing out of nowhere. They were not dropping from hyperspace. They were simply emerging, like shadows detaching from the darkness. A fleet of dark ships. Their hulls were jagged, insectoid, made of a material that drank the light and reflected nothing. Their intentions felt utterly hostile, utterly destructive. The Void Swarm. You had read about them in the archives. A legend, a horror story told to frighten young minds. A plague that consumed stars and worlds. They moved with a chilling, perfect unity. A single hive mind bent on cosmic annihilation. They were not heading for you. Their trajectory was aimed at a nearby system, a system with 5 inhabited planets. Your small scout ship was nothing to them, a piece of dust in their path. But one of them noticed you. A smaller, faster vessel broke from the formation. It changed course, heading directly for you. Its weapon ports glowed with a malevolent red energy. There was no hail, no warning, only the cold certainty of attack. Panic seized you, a cold, sharp fear unlike anything you had ever felt. Your ship had no weapons, no shields to speak of. You were defenseless. You were going to die out here, alone and unheard. The enemy ship grew larger in your view. Its forward cannons began to glow brighter, charging for a killing blow. But as the fear peaked, something else rose to meet it. The fire in your hand blazed to life. The spiral on your palm burned with the intensity of a small sun. The warmth spread up your arm, into your chest. The song of the stars was back, not as a whisper, but as a roar. You were not defenseless. You faced the approaching enemy. You took a deep breath. You opened your mouth and let the power out. It was not a note this time. It was a word you did not know you knew. It burst from you in a torrent of golden light and thunderous sound. A voice of suns. The sound wave, visible as a ripple in space, shot across the void. It struck the swarm ship head-on. The dark hull, designed to absorb energy, could not absorb this. This was not energy. It was a command to unmake. The metal screamed and buckled. The red weapon lights flickered and died. A massive fracture split the ship from nose to tail. It tumbled out of control, crippled and silent. The rest of the swarm did not even pause. They continued on their path of destruction, leaving their wounded behind. After the swarm ship was broken, a strange calm fell. The rest of the massive fleet had already passed you by. They were a dark stain vanishing into the distance. You were left alone with your crippled attacker. It floated dead in space, a testament to the impossible power you held. You stared at your hand. The light had faded back to a soft glow. What was this voice you carried? Your sensors chimed again, a much softer, gentler sound. A single new contact had appeared. It was an old ship, scarred and pitted. It looked more like a patched-up asteroid than a star vessel. It was approaching your position slowly, cautiously. It was not a swarm ship. Its energy signature was chaotic and alive. A message request appeared on your console. You hesitated. Then you accepted it. A voice filled the cockpit. It was rough and crackled with static, but it was a voice. "This is Captain Kalen of the freighter, Drifter. I saw what you did." The voice was deep and laced with weariness, but there was an undercurrent of awe. "I've been tracking that swarm for 3 weeks. I have never seen anyone do that." There was a long pause. You did not know how to respond. You had never spoken to another living being before. "Who are you?" Kalen asked. His voice was softer now, less demanding. He seemed to sense your hesitation. "I mean you no harm. I think you might be what we've been looking for." He was a message bearer, seeking the source of the Starfire he had just witnessed. You did not know why, but you trusted him. Maybe it was the honest weariness in his voice. Maybe it was the fact that he was the first person to see your power and not react with fear. You sent him your ship's identification, a simple burst of data. He went quiet for a moment. "Alara, from the Silent Worlds." He sounded surprised. "I thought that was just a myth." He made you an offer. "The swarm is heading for the Cygnus colonies. They won't stand a chance. But there is a place, a sanctuary, the Galactic Concord." He explained it was a hidden station, a last bastion for the free peoples of the galaxy. "We need you, Alara. That power you have. It's the first real hope we've had in years. You agreed. Your small scout ship could not make the journey alone. You allowed his ship to engage a tractor beam. The Drifter was an old vessel, but it was powerful. It pulled your tiny ship along in its wake. Kalen opened a continuous voice channel. He told you stories to fill the silence. Stories of battles won and lost, of worlds that had fallen to the swarm. He was trying to prepare you. After several days of travel, you arrived. Kalen navigated his ship through a dense, swirling nebula. The clouds of gas and dust blocked all sensors. Then, the nebula parted. Before you lay a sight that stole your breath. The galactic conquered. It was a star station of impossible size, a city built in the void. Countless ships were docked to its crystalline spires, vessels of every shape and design. It was a beacon of light in the overwhelming darkness. The last stand of 1,000 different species, all seeking refuge from the swarm. Docking at the Concorde was an assault on your senses. After a lifetime of silence, the noise was a physical blow. The clamor of thousands of beings, the hiss of hydraulics, the symphony of a dozen different languages. Kalen led you from your ship into the main concourse. It was a river of life. Beings tall and short, scaled and furred, all moved with a sense of urgent purpose. They were all refugees. You could see it in their eyes. A shared history of loss. Kalen guided you through the crowds. He was a known figure here. People nodded to him with respect. A few of them glanced at you. A silent girl with a glowing hand, trailing in the wake of the famous captain. You must have been a strange sight. Kalen led you deep into the station's core, to a quiet section marked Archives and Antiquities. It smelled of old data slates and recycled air, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. An ancient four-armed being greeted Kalen with a series of quiet clicks. It led you to a private room. In the center of the room, a single data slate rested on a pedestal. "This is why I brought you here," Kalen said, his voice low. He gestured to the slate. "It's from a civilization that was old when your people were young. They fought the swarm too, and they lost. But they left this behind." He activated the slate. Holographic text in an unknown language filled the air. A translation appeared below it in standard galactic text. The title read, "The Prophecy of Ash." The prophecy spoke of the void swarm. It called them the Great Devourer, the Eater of Light. It described their relentless march across the galaxies. It foretold an age of darkness and despair. But it also spoke of a single point of hope. It spoke of a speaker of Starfire, a being born of a silent people, who would wield a voice that could command the very fabric of stars. You read the words, your heart pounding. The description was unmistakable. It spoke of a mark shaped like a swirling galaxy. It spoke of a voice that was both light and sound. The prophecy was about you. But the final line sent a chill down your spine. The speaker would face the heart of the swarm. They would either sing a song of creation to save the galaxy, or a song of ruin that would doom them all. There was no middle ground. No pressure at all, you thought, with a sense of humor as dry as desert sand. Kalen saw the look on your face. It's a heavy burden, he admitted. For generations, we thought it was a metaphor, a myth. But then I saw you. He looked at your glowing hand. Now, we have to make sure you're ready. The prophecy doesn't say you'll win. It just says you'll fight. And so your training began. Kalen was not a gentle teacher. He was a soldier. He understood survival, not theory. He took you to the station's massive training decks, Vast, empty chambers where they simulated deep space combat. The power is raw, he told you on the first day. It's a storm inside you. You need to learn how to direct the lightning. He would have the simulation throw asteroids at you. At first, you would just shout, unleashing a wide cone of destructive energy. It would vaporize the rocks, but it was inefficient. That's a fire hose, Kalen grumbled over the intercom. Useless against 100 targets, you need a scalpel. He made you practice for hours, focusing your will, shaping the sound. Slowly, you learned control. You learned to weave the Starfire into a shield, a shimmering wall of golden light that could deflect incoming energy blasts. You learned to narrow the beam, to create a lance of pure sound and fury, a weapon that could pierce the thickest armor. You even learned to shape it into a blade, a sword of solidified sunlight, humming in your hand. Kalen would watch, his gruff expression hiding a sliver of pride. Not bad, he'd say. For a kid from a library, it was the highest praise he could offer. While you trained, the Concorde's best minds were at work. They analyzed the data from the swarm ship you had disabled. Their findings were more terrifying than anyone had imagined. They cut open the hull. They searched the inner workings. There was no crew, no pilot, no biological component at all. There was not even a central computer in the traditional sense. The ship itself was the organism. It was a single cell in a larger body. The void swarm was not a species. It was a plague, a self-replicating machine virus on a galactic scale. A von Neumann probe swarm gone horribly wrong. Its only directive was to consume. It broke down planets, stars, and ships into raw materials. And it used those materials to build more of itself. You could not reason with it. You could not negotiate with it. It did not want territory or resources for a civilization. It wanted everything. Its victory would mean the end of all matter and all energy. A universe of perfect dead order. The silence of the swarm was the silence of a grave. Suddenly, the silence of your home world seemed like a vibrant song in comparison. The truth of the swarm settled over the Concord like a shroud. The hope your arrival had sparked now seemed small against such a foe. The leaders of the galactic Concord held a desperate council. The swarm was adapting. Reports came in from the front lines. They were developing new shield harmonics. They were learning to counter the Concorde's weapon frequencies. They were learning from every battle. Time was running out. Their fleets were being pushed back, system by system. A final, desperate plan was forged. A single all-or-nothing strike. The intelligence from the salvaged ship revealed a weakness, or at least a center. The entire swarm was coordinated by a single command unit, a central nexus that acted as the hive mind's brain. The Concorde called it the heart of the hive. If they could destroy it, the swarm might fall into disarray, giving them a fighting chance. The heart of the hive was located at the very center of the swarm's vast formation, protected by thousands of war ships. A conventional attack was impossible. No weapon they possessed could punch through those defenses. But you were not a conventional weapon. Your voice of Starfire was something the swarm had never encountered before, something it could not analyze or adapt to. You were the key. The plan was simple and suicidal. The conquered fleet would launch a massive offensive, a distraction to draw away the bulk of the swarm's defenses. In the chaos, a single fast ship would make a run for the center. That ship would be the Drifter. Its crew would be you and Kalen. The day of the attack arrived. The hangar bay of the Concord was a controlled chaos. Pilots wished each other luck. Final systems checks were made. Kalen stood by the Drifter's boarding ramp. He handed you a comm unit. Stay close to me, he said, his voice unusually serious. I'll get you there. You just have to sing your song when the time comes. He tried a smile. It looked more like a grimace. Let's go make some noise. The battle was a storm of light and shadow. The Concorde fleet clashed with the outer edge of the swarm. Explosions blossomed like silent flowers in the void. Kalen flew the drifter with a master's skill. He weaved through wreckage and weapon fire. Swarm ships, like angry insects, broke off to pursue you. You stood behind him, one hand on the console. You used your voice to blast them away. Lances of light, sharp and precise, pierced their dark hulls. You were a two-person weapon. Kalen flew, you fought. The journey to the center felt like an eternity. The conquered fleet was taking heavy losses. You could hear the desperate calls over the comms. But they were holding the line. They were buying you time. And then you saw it. The heart of the hive. It was a perfect sphere of black metal, the size of a small moon. It absorbed all light, a hole in the fabric of space. It was surrounded by the largest swarm warships, an honor guard of destruction. Kalen pushed the drifter to its limits. He dodged and weaved, his knuckles white on the controls. "This is as close as I can get you," he yelled over the scream of the engines. "It's all up to you now, Alara." You stepped up to the forward viewport. The great black sphere filled your vision. It felt empty, a god of nothingness. You closed your eyes. You reached for the power inside you. It was no longer just a storm. It was a language, a deep, fundamental grammar that underpinned reality itself. The prophecy had called it a song of creation. But creation and destruction were two sides of the same coin. You took a breath, and you spoke. It was not a word of fire or force. It was a word of quiet, absolute authority. A single note of a language older than the stars. A command spoken to the machine god. A song that gently, lovingly, told it that its existence was an error. A complex and beautiful equation that resolved elegantly to zero. You told it to unmake itself. A wave of pure, profound silence emanated from the black sphere. Not the empty silence of the void, or the thinking silence of your home. It was the silence of a question that has been answered. The light in every swarm ship went out, all at once. Across the entire battlefield, the enemy fleet died. Their engines went cold. Their weapon ports went dark. They stopped being a swarm and became a field of dead metal, drifting aimlessly in the dark. The Concorde fleet fell silent. The comms, which had been a cacophony of battle, were filled with stunned quiet. Then, a single voice, a cheer. It was followed by another and another, until the channels were flooded with a wave of triumphant joy. They had won. It was over. On the bridge of the drifter, you slumped against the viewport, exhausted. The power receded, leaving you feeling hollow but peaceful. Kalen turned, his face streaked with sweat. He looked at the field of dead ships. Then he looked at you. He didn't say anything. He just gave a slow, respectful nod. You were no longer Alara, the outcast from a silent world. You were the speaker, the woman who had sung a machine god to sleep. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to heal. The Concorde ships recovered the survivors. They began the long work of rebuilding. You became a figure of legend, a symbol of hope. But you did not seek power or praise. You found a quiet corner of the great station, a garden where star-born flora grew in simulated sunlight. Here, you found a new kind of silence, one filled with the promise of life. You were the guardian of a new and fragile peace, a peace born from a single, impossible word. The stars still sang to you. But now, you were finally able to sing back.